Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a first look at an upcoming Tier 9 premium Polish heavy tank, the CZOLG WZ-46. This tank is very interesting looking and statistically is also a little bit of an enigma. It stands out from the crowd. And first of all, straight away, looking at this tank's model, well, it's going to have some kind of double track. As to whether that's going to be a mechanic, we're yet to know. However, I have a slight feeling this could be some kind of like reserved track mechanic, similar to what the American heavy tanks have, M5Y line. But obviously, that's something we're going to have to wait and see. We don't, unfortunately, get to find that out from this thing's statistics, but its statistics, as I said, are quite interesting. So, it's going to be a Tier 9 heavy tank packing 650 Alpha. That is new. We are yet to have a Tier 9 heavy which packs 650. It is going to be the second highest Alpha damage at Tier 8. That's quite comfortable. You know, the only thing that beats it out is the Type 4 heavy with the derp gun which packs 680. 650 is really quite comfortable at Tier 9, and it does very much contribute to that alpha damage increase, that alpha damage creep that we are beginning to see across, Tier 8, Tier 9, and Tier 10, where slowly but surely alpha damages are getting higher on new tanks. But let's forget about that and focus more on this thing's statistics. So, penetration values, 252mm standard AP is okay, not incredible, but definitely okay. We have had some tanks recently which pack 260, but 252 is actually okay. 310mm heat as gold penetration is really okay. 310 is that kind of the lowest value that becomes acceptable for heat at Tier 9 and Tier 10. But it's definitely going to work because it's heat, so you've got to remember it's better normalization values, and in fact it doesn't lose penetration and range. Its gun kind of shell velocity values are not incredible. Do note 900, 800, 800. Yeah, you are going to feel that at anything longer than 150 meters, but it's okay. Could be worse, right? Could be 600. Reload time of 20.5 seconds gives this thing a kind of terrible DPM. You are basically going to be firing just less than 3 times a minute. So, you're packing pretty much a 2000 DPM, which is not incredible, but we'll look a little bit more at that in a second. An aim time of 3 seconds and a dispersion of 0.44. My God, that is bad. Yes, you have a 20-second reload, so you have only 3 seconds. No, 3 seconds aim time is terrible. 0.44 dispersion is terrible. This thing will feel horrendous at anything closer than short distance. We're talking 50 meters. You are not going to have fun shooting at medium to any form of long distance beyond 200 tank. 0.44 dispersion is really quite painful, and you are going to want to do everything you can to improve that. Unfortunately, we're not privy to this tank's soft gun handling statistics, so its dispersion whilst moving the turret, moving the tank, on the move. Yeah, we're not privy to that. However, I imagine not great. So that is going to be one equipment slot taken up by V-stabs, one equipment slot taken up by a gun rammer. Yeah, you're going to see this tank is looking like it's going to be pretty equipment dependent. And you're going to want to run probably 5 or 6 pieces of equipment on a tank that can only run 3. Well, gun depression of 8 degrees. Okay, that's a redeeming factor. 8 degrees is quite nice. This tank looks very tall, very big and fat. So having 8 degrees of gun depression on a tall tank is quite nice because you can aim down on tanks that get in front of you. Mobility. Yeah, okay. We're beginning to see another issue here. 30 forwards, 12 in reverse with a power to weight of 12.4. Yeah, this tank's going to be slow, sluggish, and painful. That means you kind of have to run a turbo on this tank. And we're already at 3 pieces of equipment without even considering running a hardening device on there. Yeah. 30 forwards, 12 in reverse mandates a turbo. You're going to want to have a turbo on this tank for the pure matter of fact that you're going to actually maybe be able to go 36. 30 is forward is just slow, and you're going to feel it, and it's going to take a lot of time to get into position, especially with the more increasing turbo games that we're having. Game speeds being 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes. You're going to struggle to get into position to get any form of early game damage. You're then going to be chasing mid game damage, and you're not going to get any late game damage, which is definitely going to be a limiting factor of this tank with the low mobility like that. And it's going to mandate a good player to get the most out of it, because you're going to need to preempt where you need to be to get the damage. 30 is bad, put it simply. Onto its survivability, well, it's a little bit of a better story here. 1950 HP is quite comfortable, quite nice. However, there are tanks which do have better at tier 9, but we'll have a look at that in a second. This thing's turret armor is okay, on paper. 250mm is quite comfortable at tier 9. However, we look at the armor model, and it's got these kind of like eyeballs either side of the gun that I have a feeling are going to be pretty weak. Especially, you hit flat bang on in the middle of that. I don't see that being any more than 230. So that's going to be a weak point, and they look pretty large. I think the more 250mm sections are going to be this, either side of the turret, and probably like up here and like down here. Not great. Full armor, 140mm. Also not particularly great. And it will definitely feel like a weakness, especially when you look at this tank's armor model, the fact that it has a humongous lower plate that is basically the size of the Empire State Building turned on its side. Good luck missing this thing, because damn is it huge. And then we look at its upper plate, which is very well angled, right? However, it has a shot catch that goes the entire way round that looks incredibly flat. I don't see being very strong, and is going to be very, very hard to hide because it runs right up to underneath the gun. That is going to be a huge limiting factor. That looks very weak, very big, very hard to hide. Yeah. So this thing's armor on paper looks okay. However, when we actually look at its armor model, it doesn't look particularly incredible. So far, we've had a tank that has quite nice alpha damage. The first time we're going to have 650 alpha in a non-derp gun at tier 9. Penetration values are okay. Gun handling, very weak. DPM, average. Ability, very weak. And then its armor looks okay on paper, but in practice, I actually think is going to be quite weak. So we've got, so far, a pretty average story. Nothing particularly jumps out and makes me go, oh, yeah, that looks good. But moving on to, view range, 390 is actually quite nice. They've been kind of quite nice, this tank, but that's because it's so tall. Taller tanks tend to have more view range. And it's going to be packing the standard Polish heavy tank crew. So you could use your 60C crew in here of a commander, a gunner, a radio operator, a driver, and a loader. So let's actually see what these statistics mean when we compare it to two tanks at tier 9 that are already in the game. The 50 TP, which is tier 9 tech tree, Polish heavy, which leads to the TP, and then the type 4 heavy, which I've already mentioned, but the non-derp variety. So packing the 15cm non-derp. So, in terms of DPM, the CZOLG sits smack bang in the middle. 1902 compared to 2190 for the TP, and 1896 type 4 heavy. So, it's okay. But as I did say, there are tanks with lower alpha, faster reloads that pack significantly more DPM than 1900, and 1900 at tier 9 is not the greatest. Definitely be exposed. However, the alpha damage, as I did say, is lovely. It's a completely new one. We've never had 650 alpha at tier 9. It's really quite comfortable, and it will punish if you do shots, but we'll get onto that in a second. Compared to the 560 for the 50 and the 600 type 4, yeah, 650 is lovely. The reload time, worst on paper here. 20.5 seconds compared to 15.34 for the 50 TP and 18.98 for the type 4 heavy. Yeah. Every single shot you take in this tank is valuable. That is the issue with having a long reload and your entire DPM packed into one shot, which is what this tank has. And when you consider that this tank has 0.44 dispersion and 3 seconds aim time, you miss one shot, you lose 650 of your DPM because you are only firing 3 times a minute, basically. When you are firing 3 times a minute and then you miss one of those shots, you miss 2 of those shots, your DPM becomes torrid. And that is a big issue with tanks with big alpha, big dispersion. Because every single shot is so incredibly valuable because your DPM is that one shot. Miss it, your DPM is pretty much halved in some cases. In this case, your DPM is basically cut in a third. So it's not good. But 0.44, it's mitigatable. And if you do everything you can to improve that gun handling, you could pull it down to probably 0.38, which becomes the kind of boundary of acceptable. 0.38 is the standard for the Type 4 Heavy and the 50T, which, you do improve. Run V-stabs on both of those tanks. You pull it up to probably 0.6, improving this tank's soft gun handling statistics, which are bad as well. Aim time, the WZ-46 has the worst on paper here as well. 3 seconds compared to 2.88 and 2.78. Things are bad when the Type 4 has better gun handling than you. Yeah, that's the kind of situation that we're in with this tank. Mobility, okay. It sits smack bang between the 50 TP and the Type 4 Heavy. The 50 TP has 35 forwards, the Type 4 has 25 forwards. CZOLG WZ has 30 forwards. Slow could be improved definitely with a turbo, definitely probably with a turbo. Reverse speed, once again, kind of does sit smack bang between the 50 TP and the Type 4. Type 4 goes 10 in reverse, the 50 TP goes 14 in reverse, the W6 goes 12 in reverse. So its mobility, once again, a very average, very middle of the road. However, 35 and 25, neither are particularly great. 30 is terrible. Take that on face value. Gun depression, 8 degrees, 8 degrees, 10 degrees. That's okay. Definitely workable. And especially considering this tank is so tall, 8 degrees does look quite comfortable. HP pool. Interestingly, considering everything else we've seen so far, that this tank has bad DPM, has all of its DPM wrapped into one shot, has bad gun handling. Well, it also has the lowest HP pool. 1950 compared to 2000 for the 2050 for the Type 4 Heavy. It's almost as if the WZ-46 is trying to be a super heavy, but from like Wish or Temu. It's not great. It trying to be a super heavy without having everything a super heavy has. So take as that what you wish. In terms of the armor, on paper, the CZOLG has better than the 50 TP. However, in practice, I don't think that's going to be the case, just because of its humongous lower plate, its shot trap that runs all the way around below the turret, and the fact that the turret has basically 2 bulbous eyes that are weak. I think on paper, in practice, despite the fact that on paper the 50 TP has worse armor, I actually think it's going to be better. Type 4 Heavy, league of its own in terms of armor, 252. Yeah, we don't talk about that. Yes, it has weaknesses. Yes, it has flat parts, but, it's Type 4 Heavy. It's a true super heavy. Penetration values, interestingly, here is where the CZOLG WZ begins to redeem itself. 252mm AP is better than the 50 T50, but not as good as the Type 4 Heavy's 257. Do bear in mind, it's AP, so it has the ability to overmatch, and with this thing having a high caliber gun, it's not as high as the Type 4 Heavies, but having a high caliber gun, you are going to be able to overmatch a lot of plates. I think 35mm plates with this tank's gun, so that's really quite good. So that does also give this thing having AP base quite a nice boost. And its gold penetration is the best here. 310mm heat compared to 303mm APCR for the 50T, and 290mm Type 4 Heavy. 310mm gold, and I think just having heat as a gold penetration is definitely a factor. Normalization values, it doesn't lose its penetration over range. Do bear in mind the fact that you aren't going to be hitting tanks. So it's a kind of double-barreled gun. You're going to maybe hit, and if you hit, you'll probably pen, but good luck hitting in the first place. So that is the CZOLG WZ-46, a Tier 9 Polish heavy tank that's on the way to the Supertest. And I think it's pretty bad. I think this thing needs some pretty significant love before we actually see it. And I'm not talking about making this tank overpowered, because this tank has the potential to become a bit of a monster. You know, if Wargaming aren't careful and they buff this tank any city, this thing could become a tier 960 before its nerf. But currently, I just think it's bad. I think it's trying to be a super heavy without actually being a super heavy. Because to be a super heavy, you need a high alpha gun that is. It doesn't have the greatest gun handling, but it will hit its shots. Currently, it has a high alpha gun, but with the inability to hit its shots. It doesn't have the HP to be a super heavy, where you can sit there, aim, shot, you're going to be penned, because neither does it have great armor. Yeah, this thing is currently trying to be something that it isn't, and I think if it is going to continue trying to be a super heavy, it's not going to be great. So, doesn't have the armor, doesn't have the gun handling to do it. So, there you go. That's the CZOЛG P46. Do let me know down in the comments. Do you agree? Do you disagree with me? I know this tank has a pretty interesting history in real life, so if you do know it, do let me know as well. I am interested to find out. And yeah, I'll see you all again very soon.